Image rectification, georeferencing. Raw digital images usually contain geometric distortions so significant that they can't be used directly as a map base without subsequent processing. And the sources of these distortions range from things like variation in altitude, attitude, so if the platform is twisted or skewed in some way, velocity, speed of the platform, whether it's operating in the atmosphere or in outer space, to some other factors such as, atmospheric refraction, which is more random and can occur on a pixel by pixel basis, relief displacement, which is very random, things that are closer to the image difference scale, or to the platform difference scale, from things that are further away. So while it may seem, like these are very minor differences, these are things that do need to be corrected for and are corrected for in most satellite imagery. Some of these distortions are systematic, so they're things that we understand very well, whereas others are random, things like atmospheric and terrain distortion, and these require different types of corrections. So systematic distortions are pretty well understood, and they can be corrected fairly simply with relatively simple transformations, geometric transformations. And in our text, there are some transformations that are described in the one of the appendices. There's an appendix B that describes some of the more common forms of coordinate transformation, particularly the affine transformation that's commonly used for systematic distortion. So these kinds of transformations are relatively simple, and we typically think of these as processes of resampling, where you have a raw set of data that is distorted, and this shows the skew from the Earth rotating underneath the satellite as it's passing from north to south. This is in a polar orbiting satellite, and then the matrix that's used for correction and resampling of pixels. And so values are taken from the raw data behind the geometrically correct matrix, and they're assigned using relatively simple reassignments or resampling to the geometrically correct map reference, so that you go from having a distorted raw satellite image to a geometrically correct image map. And so this image represents a georeferenced image that's been fit to a universal transverse Mercator coordinate system, grid system that is well understood and is based on an understood map plane coordinate system and projection system that is easily referenced to other projections and other coordinate systems in a GIS like ArcGIS Desktop. Since most of the data that we get from NASA and the U.S. Geological Survey has all of this pre-processing applied to it, where it's, there's atmospheric correction done, there is terrain correction done, there's georeferencing, very tight georeferencing that's applied to this. We don't have to worry about it too much because we're getting pre-processed images. But there actually are some fairly large data sets that are not georeferenced that may require georeferencing. This is a really nice example of this here in Illinois at the the Illinois Geospatial Data Clearinghouse, which is housed at the Illinois State Geological Survey at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, in downstate in Urbana-Champaign. And this is a really valuable, exceptionally valuable data set for just for all kinds of historical research, for historical mapping, for mapping from and looking at and working with data sets that are historically collected or have been historically collected and archived now, that really are, we can't lose these. They may eventually be georeferenced, but as it currently exists with state budgets the way they were, I guess, or they are, this particular data set has not been georeferenced, and it would be a fairly massive undertaking to go about georeferencing this. I want to show you a couple of examples of how this can be used and can be georeferenced, and is is relevant for some of the things that I think people may be interested in working with. So here's an example of an index that is used by state of Illinois to index these images, and you can see flight lines here with center points of images from this period, and you can also see some of the metadata associated with a particular image. You can see you can pull this out, and this is in Cook County, and then there's some codes here that are used to identify a particular image, and then flight lines and so on. And then you have image formats here that you're able to download. So we do have TIFF image, very high resolution TIFF imagery, also JPEG, which is very useful in a number of ways, and then Mr. SID, which is kind of a relic image format. So let me show you a different image. This is an image from 1938. It's hard to imagine having a really detailed aerial image. This is from this same collection in Cook County, having a really detailed image from the depths of the Depression in the 1930s. But these are extremely high resolution, very valuable images that are in the in the archives of the Illinois State Geological Survey. And if you look at this, there's some things you can see, or just if you're interested in these sort of things, which I kind of am. Here you can see part of the Skokie Lagoons in northern Cook County, and this is as they're being constructed by hand, by steam shovel, by and also by the Civilian Conservation Corps. So you can see right here, there's a Civilian Conservation Corps camp that is now forest. So it's in the forest preserve. So this is now completely forested. These buildings have been removed, and there's a number of other things. And so you can see. You can also see here are some ground control points that have been used. So these little circles on the image were drawn with a compass. Here's another one here where there's been a photogrammetrist who is picking ground control points for georeferencing at some point in an analog sense parts of this image. But this is from this is now largely completely developed. These areas here that you can see that are mostly farmland, a little bit of forest here and there, these now are all pretty much completely developed and covered by suburban city. So this is just an example of these images, how these images can be valuable for historical research and also for planning and understanding where we were in 1938 and what we were, what particular parts of, and these images, this particular collection covers the entire state of Illinois. So we're really talking about tens of thousands of of images that are in the collection. So there is a method in ArcGIS, and I'll outline it for you here in just a second, using the georeferencing toolbar that will allow you to create georeferenced raster layers from TIFF images, JPEG images, and I believe even Mr. Sid images. Excuse me. So you can use that if you're interested, and the technique is outlined here. You can take a look at this. It's relatively simple. It is also very tedious. It's difficult, difficult to use in ArcGIS. I'm not sure if you're interested in doing this. There are some other methods that, if anybody is interested, I can go over using a much simpler tool set to create, georeferenced images that can be displayed in different platforms, different geospatial platforms like Google Earth, Google Maps, and so on. And let me just show you some examples of that here in just a second. So here you can see how the affine transformation is used to transform pixel by pixel a raw image, an ungeoreferenced image, into a coordinate space that is a georeferenced coordinate space. And it looks very simple in this diagram here, but this is the transformation, the principal transformation that's used in ArcGIS Desktop when you're using ArcGIS Desktop. So the affine transformation, which is described in Appendix B. If you're interested, this is not something I expect people to master or to become familiar with the mathematics of this, unless you're particularly interested in it. But it is described in detail in Appendix B of our text. Okay, here is the image that we were just looking at a moment ago, and it's been georeferenced in a relatively simple fashion inside the Google Earth platform. So you can do this in the standard free Google Earth platform. You can create KMZ files that are shareable. Wonderful. It's just a wonderful way to georeference these type of data. And there are tools in ArcGIS Desktop. If you want to bring this into ArcGIS Desktop, you can. So if you look at this, this is this detailed image that we were looking at, or at least part of this detailed image that we were looking at earlier, showing, really in great detail this area in November of 1938. Again, you can see all of the construction that was going on in the Skokie lagoons as they were being, dug and created by, these Civilian Conservation Corps workers in, in the 1930s during the Depression. Very, it's a very interesting and interesting historical period. And so, just looking at this in 1938, and Google Earth is a geospatial browser, that actually gives you the ability to look at a particular image, and then to sort of slide back and forth between the current time, 2019, and the these historical periods that we have available to us. We can also look at things like the stockyards, for instance. So, we can georeference areas like the like the stockyards on the south side of Chicago, which I've done that. And here's an image of the stockyards, where the stockyards are present, what they look like, in 1938, in November of 1938. You can see the date there on the corner of the photographic image. And then here are the stockyards in great detail. These are all the pens of the animals. Here's the big, this is where the animals were slaughtered and rendered, and the different conveyors that moved carcasses of animals all about. Not something particularly pleasant for some of us to think about, but this was, a big part of the history of this city that we live in. So you look at this in 1938, and then you look at it in 2019, and you can see now it's an industrial park. The stockyards are gone. What was once a railroad siding, right here where all the railroad cars came in and loaded up, meat and other products from the stockyard, is now a place where trucks come in and containers are offloaded from trucks, and rail, a limited rail terminal there as well. So, this is just this is a good way to help understand what was at one time in this part of the city, and now what is. And because, this is a KML document, you can put, some relatively interesting content in here. And this is now a KMZ that's very easy to share. People don't have to have GIS to be able to look at that, and they can use this to help understand where we were in 1938 and where we are now. So if anyone's interested in this, I can maybe show real quickly online a little workshop, and give a little workshop in how to do this if anyone is interested in this sort of thing.